Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Bayou Bets for a Thursday, January the 19th. I am Jim Derry, along with Gabe Henderson. Zach Ewing will be joining us shortly, as is the theme of The Advocate and bet.NOLA.com. We have had some issues with our internet, and I'm sure most of you who follow us know that, but it's okay. We'll get through it, and we're going to talk a lot about the NFL. We're going to talk about Super Bowl odds, talk a little bit about the Pelicans. Oh, my goodness. We're going to talk about women's basketball. And we're going to end the show with best bets. We're also going to have Max Meyer of Caesars coming on in a little while to talk about these NFL odds. Gabe, what is going on this afternoon?
Absolutely nothing. Just waiting for the weekend. I am fiending for some of that NFL action again because what we got last weekend was incredible.
You're probably a little bit too young, but as Loverboy said, you are working for the weekend. You know, I don't know. I don't know how much your music goes back. Here's a man who knows about the 80s a little bit, even though he was just a little baby back then. Zach Ewing is back with us, and we're going to let him take over the show.
I am a child of the 80s. You know, you think with all the problems, the technical problems that we've had at the Advocate this week, I would have known better than to expect things to go smoothly today. So here I am, and working for the weekend, by the way. Did you notice the PGA is using that as their theme song? Since the Live Tour doesn't have cuts and the PGA does, I think that was very wise choice.
And then another 80s song, you said, "Here I Am." A little White Snake action going on.
Yeah, there you go.
You're just all over the 80s. I know you're too young. All of y'all are too young to know what the hell I'm talking about.
I do appreciate 80s music.
Favorite decade of music.
All right.
I'm a sucker for 60s and 70s.
Jerry is here this afternoon. I'm going to let you take over in just a second, Zach, but I'm assuming what he doesn't believe is the fact that Pete Carmichael, which is the news of the day, is apparently staying on it. Well, he's staying on for sure. That there's no question. But the question of whether he's going to be offensive coordinator, obviously, it's probably 90%. Zach and I we're texting each other back and forth. I am not 100% sure he's going to be offensive coordinator. Just because he's staying on doesn't necessarily mean that's what he's going to do. But one would think that that's what, if he's going to be on there, Zach, that he's going to be OC.
I mean, the report is that he is not going to be replaced. So that language to me, you know, he's the offensive coordinator. If someone else becomes the offensive coordinator, whether he stays on in another role, he has been replaced. So to me, that tells me he's going to be now. Could they bring in someone else and call him co-offensive coordinator? You could see something like that. Joe Lombardi, maybe back in the building. Yeah, I don't like it.
Football's played in the summer. It's hot here. We don't need Coco.
Quite frankly, you know, if Pete Carmichael, the whole argument was he didn't really want to do this job last year. If he's changed his mind, does he not deserve another year with, you know, a quarterback of his choosing, maybe an offensive line that's more healthy? I don't think it's a terrible idea. I don't think, you know, Jerry says 2024 loading. I don't know that it's like the season's over because of this.
I think that he already had a quarterback of his choosing. He obviously chose Andy Dalton. We saw how that worked out.
I mean, of all the quarterbacks in the league, I don't think he chose Andy Dalton. If he could have had Derek Carr or somebody from the draft, or even a Lamar Jackson.
Part of this group that brought Andy Dalton in and then kept
as a backup.
Well, then he decided he was a starter 3 games into the season.
Well, listen, long off.
I'm not giving Sean Payton's little clipboard holder any slack. Trust me.
I will say this though. There's been some talk out in the Twitterverse about how the Saints are just tanking. They brought back Allen and Carmichael. They're going to tank for. They're not tanking. The roster is too good. It's a weak schedule. To tank for the number 1 pick for Caleb Williams, you got to go like 3-15, I guess 3-14. They're not going to be that bad.
I mean, they've got too far to go to catch Gabe's perennial tanking team.
We're not going to be tanking next year. Probably.
That doesn't mean you're going to be good, but yeah.
No, I never said that. I'm not.
All right, Zach, you want to tell us our sponsors so we don't forget them?
Yeah. We're brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. You can go to LSUposter.com. Talk about a team that's actually might win something sometime soon. The LSU Tigers, you could commemorate them with championship posters. A set of 3 is yours for just a minimum $10 bet. Depending on which 3 you pick, that's up to $100 value. You're getting it for $10, and you might win the bet. By the way, if you listen to us, I won't say that. If you listen to us, you have a 50-50 chance of winning the bet.
Depends on what week it is.
That's right. That's right.
We're hot one week, cold the next.
Yeah, listen to our picks and fade or follow as you see fit. But speaking of that, we will have Max Meyer from Caesars Sportsbook on the show here in about 15 minutes. He is back with us to tell us some trends for the divisional round games, Super Bowl futures, all of that sort of stuff, line movements, where the money has gone from both the public side and the professional side. So looking forward to that. In the meantime, guys, we can dig into the games. We'll start with Saturday's games. And the one that I was probably the least interested in is this one until I found out that there's like a 50% chance of snow on Saturday in Kansas City. We could have a snow game at Arrowhead.
Does it matter? I mean,
I don't think it matters to the game. It's just going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, and also I think snow in Buffalo is also a possibility looking at the weather this morning. So it could be an interesting weather weekend. Although the weather forecast that I looked at yesterday said none of the 4 games are going to be affected. Now it has changed greatly in a day. I don't think it matters for the Chiefs. I don't care if they play snow, rain, hurricane, tornado. The Jags have had their happy little run now. And look, I think the Chiefs at 8.5 is a perfect number for a teaser. Spoiler alert. This could be the teaser leg of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I love it as a teaser, but I don't even think you need to mess with another game. I think the Chiefs cover this number. I mean, I know 8.5 is a lot in the NFL. But they're lying in wait. The Jaguars are stepping up in class. We said this on Tuesday. Like, to me, this feels like the mid-90s. Cowboys are playing the 49ers, and you've got a whole bunch of teams that are real happy with themselves for winning a wild card round game that are going to get a cold splash of reality come this weekend, Gabe.
Yeah, I agree. And, let's be honest. The Jags wouldn't have covered 8.5 last week if they weren't playing the Chargers, who are one of the most poorly coached teams in the league. And I'll after Staley's performance the other day, I'll feel okay saying that. But they're facing a whole different animal in Andy Reid. Andy Reid and the Chiefs don't mess around. Like Jim said, weather doesn't matter. The Chiefs are going to put up points regardless. They've got too many weapons across the board.
Also, Zach, we got a nice little group watching. We are asking comments and questions. Anybody want to chime in besides Jerry? We thank you, Jerry, for joining us. But we're happy to take your comments and questions. Just post them in the comment stream. If you're watching on Twitter, you can do @JimDerry and I'll read them there as well.
Yeah, and leave us your best bet of the weekend. Love to know from the divisional games what you like and what you're betting.
Or you can complain about Pete Carmichael.
Yeah. Seems to be the hobby du jour. The other thing, Caesars has a cool boost on this game, by the way. Zay Jones to go over, I think it's 69.5 receiving yards and score a touchdown. It's juiced up to like 4-1. Zay Jones, if you look back, and this is a spoiler alert for my big bucks. If you look back through the year at games in which the Jaguars fell behind, he starts to get, we're talking double-digit targets. We saw that last week against Tennessee. We saw it against Dallas in a game that Jaguars came back to win. And so if you buy into the idea that the Chiefs are going to have a lead in this game, it's worth looking at that boost on Caesars. So that's the first game Saturday. Then we go to Philadelphia Saturday night. Another pretty big spread here. Eagles -7.5 against the Giants. This one we disagree on, Jim. This is another game where I like the favorite. And I think the Eagles have been lying in wait, and the Giants just are not at this weight class.
Well, we'll see. I know that the Eagles are getting healthier, which does help them, and I don't think it's certainly not an easy bet. But 7.5, that hook really has me taking the Giants here. Third matchup of the season, I believe. I heard a trend this morning since 2002. The underdog in a rematch in the divisional round is 5-1 against the spread. It doesn't matter the underdog. So it doesn't matter whether someone won twice or I don't care about the third. It's hard to beat a team. I don't buy into that. It's hard to beat a team 3 times or any of that stuff. But the underdog has an advantage here. I believe the Giants are playing much better as of late. We saw them with their subs in there playing tight against the Eagles. I believe Jalen Hurts' injury, although he's not on the injury report, he is not going to be able to do the things that Jalen Hurts is usually able to do. He's not going to be able – I don't think he's going to be rushing for 60, 70 yards. I don't think he's going to be running touchdowns in like he usually does. They're certainly not going to use it 4th and 1 play where he just bolts behind the line and they just shoves forward. They're not gonna test his shoulder because they frankly can't do without him. So that's why I like the Giants. I really think this is the upset alert because there's going to be one. One of the underdogs is going to win outright this week, and to me, this is the one that it's going to be. It's very rare. I wouldn't say very rare, but it's rare for the favorites to go 4-0 straight up in divisional weekend. There's usually one. Last year I believe there were 3 last year, and so if I got to pick one, this is the one I'm picking.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, that would be you'd think it'd be even more likely that you'd see underdogs win now that that number 2 seed is not also getting that bye. In years past, the home teams also were coming off of a bye, a traditionally pretty big advantage in the NFL, and so it feels like there's going to be an upset. I personally find it kind of hard to make a case for most of the road teams this weekend, but like you say, historically somebody pops up and does it. Gabe, do you think it could be the Giants?
I think it could be. I'm actually going to split the difference between you two. I don't like the Giants to win, but I do like the Giants to cover. I think they'll keep it close in this game. They've played really well. I was really impressed with them last week, and Daniel Jones is really coming into his own under Brian Daboll. And, they're kind of like the Jaguars, what you guys said earlier. They're just kind of happy to be here at this point, and I'm looking to the future for the Giants. I'm really excited to see what they can do when Daniel Jones gets actual receivers. I think they'll keep it close this week. I can see him winning, but I don't think they will.
All right.
I got a comment from a guy who follows Datitude a lot. He follows me on Twitter. His name's JJ. He says he 100% need to hear my take on Saints retaining the entire staff, including Clipboard Pete, back to being a laughing stock franchise. I'm not sure what I'm going to say on Datitude tomorrow morning live with Jeff Duncan at 9:15. A shameless plug there on all these same social media channels. I just don't get it. I don't get why Pete Carmichael would want to stay as OC, and B, I don't get why the Saints don't think that a change is 100% warranted. The offense dropped considerably throughout the year as they went along. I believe they were in the 6 to 8 range when Jameis Winston got hurt. They stayed somewhere in the top 10 for about 2 or 3 weeks and then precipitously declined to, I think they finished 22nd in the NFL in offense. And if you don't think that's a problem, then great. You keep on doing the same things you're going to do. But I'm not sure why they think the offense is going to be any better next year. And that's a big if now. You got to think that they might want Andy Dalton back. So at this point, even if they get another quarterback, I'm not exactly sure what they think is going to change. And so it's a major problem. And I can tell you right now, I'm with this schedule, I think the Saints are over-under is probably going to be somewhere in the range of 8. And just like I was betting the over, maybe I'll be wrong again, but I'm going to be hopping on the under train.
Yeah, I will say this, and who knows exactly what the Saints are thinking inside Airline Drive, and who knows what changes are yet to come this offseason. We don't know if they'll get a draft pick from Sean Payton, if he'll be coaching next year at all. We don't know what they'll do at quarterback. We don't know these things. I will say, no matter what, if they get off to another slow start, if they're 1-3 at the end of September, oh my gosh, heads are going to be rolling because you don't. If you have a poor season and you don't make any changes, you've got to get off to a good start, or the pressure is going to be heaped on you. If you get a new OC and there's a slow start, okay, well, we're still feeling it out. Let's see how this guy does. If it's the same guys after a bad season and they're 0-2 or 1-3 or something, it could get ugly quick next fall.
Real quick.
I will say this, as an outsider, not a non-Saints fan looking into it, I don't really see a benefit of bringing in a new OC if you're going to keep Dennis Allen as the head coach, because let's be honest with ourselves, the odds are he's going to get fired at the end or before the end of next year anyway. So when you have young guys in your offense specifically, I don't know why you'd want to bring in another OC if it's almost inevitable that these guys are going to be fired anyway. So you'd have young guys like Chris Olave learning 3 different offenses in 3 different years if that were to be the case. But
as an outsider, you don't know the Saints organization, and they're loyal to the core, which is proof here. So I think Dennis Allen I really think to get fired next year, he has to have like a 5-win season or worse. I think if they go 6-11, I don't think he gets fired. That's not who this franchise is. So Dennis Allen is, and look, he got 3 years in Vegas or Oakland, or almost 3 years. I don't think they're going to fire him unless he is just completely and utterly overwhelmed. I don't blame it all on Dennis Allen anyway. There were games where he was absolutely awful, but you got to be able to score. And it's just something, we're spoiled here in New Orleans. We had 15 years of Drew Brees and Sean Payton, and it is what it is. So I'm not expecting the number one ranked offense. I'm not expecting 5,000 passing yards. I'm not expecting 30-something points a game. But you got to show that you can be efficient. And, you're talking about a season, starting off the season, I'm guessing 6 games without Alvin Kamara, who, I'm not sure how big of a deal that is at this moment, to be honest.
Pete Carmichael didn't throw to him anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Didn't use him when he was
supposed to. That's honestly
the
biggest criticism he gets, and to me, the most warranted one. We'll be joined by Max Meyer of Caesars Sportsbook here in about 5 minutes. I want to run through the Sunday games just in a preliminary fashion before he gets on. Bengals, Bills, this is, most weekends this would be the headliner. Of course, you've got another game Sunday that's also terrific. So I think my reaction here and most people's reaction is, how can this number be this high? But the Bills obviously favored by odds makers as the best team in the NFL all year long. And so they're laying quite a bit here, Jim.
They're not only favored big, but this number keeps going up, which tells me that people are betting on the Bills. Now, I can't wait to ask Max about this game. It's going to be the number one game that I'm interested in when it comes to asking him. I'm not going to bet this spread one way or the other, because I do think the Bills could easily win by a touchdown here. But look, I know the Bengals have injury issues along the offensive line and in the defensive backfield, which obviously are major problems. But Joe Burrow has shown that it doesn't matter who's playing offensive line. He showed it last year. Look, he's going to basically be playing with the same offensive line he had last year in the playoffs. And that doesn't matter to him. He finds ways to get around it. He gets sacked 8 times. He doesn't care. He finds ways to get around it. Also heard a stat that, even though Patrick Mahomes has been in the league 2.5 seasons longer than Joe Burrow, he's been sacked, including the playoffs, 1 more time than Burrow throughout their careers. That's an insane number. It's like 147 or something along those lines. So, but Burrow still finds ways to win. And I cannot lay 5.5 here. I'm not saying the Bills won't win, but Cincinnati, you want to talk about teaser legs, and we'll get to it in a minute, and you're going through a 7. I'm not sure how anyone thinks that the Bengals get blown out. But again, another one I'll be talking with Max about shortly.
Yeah, Cincinnati has gone 21 straight games without losing by more than 3 with Jamar Chase in the lineup. So I know there's a couple of qualifiers there, but basically the only time this year they lost by more than a field goal was against the Cleveland Browns. It was on Halloween. Jamar Chase didn't play.
And Zach, also, I think there are too many people putting way too much stock in the game against the Ravens last week. That's another game where you're talking about a third matchup against a team that knows you very well. John Harbaugh is a really good coach, and they know how to play defense against Cincinnati. I'm not sure that Buffalo does.
Ravens might have the best defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
The 49ers are up there, but the Ravens might have the best defense in the NFL. So speaking of the 49ers, that's our last game on Sunday. Niners -4 against the Cowboys. Numbers bobbed up and down a little bit. I think it opened 4.5, got down to 3.5. It settled on 4. Gabe, short week for the Cowboys going cross country. They obviously looked very good on Monday night, but again, stepping up in weight class. Can they do it?
I don't think so. I think the 49ers are the best team in football right now. They're the hottest, and they're the most stacked. That offense is just stuff of nightmares for opposing defenses. I know Dallas is good on defense. I don't know if they can hang with the 49ers. I really don't. I also don't trust Dak Prescott to hold on to the ball like he did against Tampa Bay. The fact of the matter is they were always going to win that game. As we said last week, Tampa Bay stinks. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that. I actually like the 49ers by more than a touchdown in this game.
Yeah, Zach, you talk about lines that don't make sense. This is overreaction week. With Dallas being, if Dallas had just skated by and covered and like barely covered against Tampa Bay and won by 4 or 6 or whatever, or Brady had some miraculous comeback that fell just short and the Cowboys escaped, this line would be like 6, which is where it should be. And so the Cowboys played an absolutely awful defense with no pass rush last week. Now they're going against the number 1 defense in the NFL that has a top 5 pass rush. It's completely different. Dak is going to be uncomfortable throughout this game. I'll be shocked if he doesn't throw at least one pick. And really, if there's a 1.5 out there, over 1.5, I'm probably going to bet it as an alternate line because I think he throws 2. I think Dak is going to be a mess this week.
So we're waiting on Max Meyer of Caesars Sportsbook, who will be here shortly. In fact, it looks like he just popped in. We'll talk some divisional odds with him. One note before we get to Max, that it's talking about how home teams don't usually win all 4 games in this round. They did lose 3 times last year. I was just looking it up. The 4 previous years, between 2017 and 2020, home teams went 13-3 straight up in this round. So, you usually had 1 lose, but they had a huge advantage where last year. So, question is, was last year
but not
an
all
anomaly?
were favored, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that, but are we going to see? Are we going to see these upsets? Are we going to see road teams step up? Let's see what Max Meyer has to say. He's got some trends, some line movements, things like that for us. Max, it's good to see you again. How are you?
Good, and no face paint this week, so just taking a bit to adjust to that. And Zach, on your note, we have obviously 4 games, so and I've looked at the money line bets for all of them. Only one favorite has gotten the majority of the money line handle so far, and that's the Chiefs. And then the rest, Cowboys, Bengals, Giants, all of them, majority of the handle for money line.
Interesting. Is that mostly public money? I mean, because we're talking number of bets, not dollars there.
No, that's dollars.
Oh, that is dollars. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe a combination of people. Well, let's sort of start chronologically, Max. Let's start with Jaguars and Chiefs. Chiefs opened, I think, 9.5 here, 8.5. It bounced back up to 9 briefly, settled back to 8.5. What are we seeing on this game?
It's been a lot of Chiefs action so far. And yes, we opened at 9.5, and at 9.5, that's where we saw early Jaguars action. But since it's been 8.5, it's been a lot of Chiefs, and the Chiefs are going to be a public team, even though they haven't really fared so well as a big favorite this season, especially at home. Against the spread, Chiefs getting about 66% of the tickets, 77% of the handle. As I alluded to before, they're the only favorite to get majority of the handle. That's at about 85% of the money, even though the Jaguars with 57% of the tickets. And another interesting thing, this is the highest total on the board at 53, and this is the only game where the majority of the money is coming in on the under. So even though in their previous matchup this season, the Chiefs just really went up and down the field against the Jaguars defense, it's just really startling to see a total this high in the playoffs. So I understand the under money there.
Yeah, and in the snow possibly too. Talking about that, I was just reading a stat that the Chiefs had 486 yards of offense in that first meeting with Jacksonville, and that was with a couple of turnovers. I don't know if you remember, the Jags opened that game with an onside kick that was successful, and so the Chiefs had actually fewer possessions to work with in that game, but just when they didn't turn it over, we're going up and down the field. We'll see what adjustments the Jaguars can make. Moving on to Saturday night, I know this is a game Jim wanted to talk to you about, Giants and Eagles. Eagles laying 7.5. Again, that hook significant here, but we see another big home favorite.
Yeah, and public has been all over the Giants. I guess not too big of a surprise. They saw in Week 18 the Giants with their backups keep this to a 6-point game. Giants coming off the nice win over the Vikings. Brian Dable getting a lot of love. Daniel Jones getting a lot of love. This is the end. With teams that have an impressive wild card performance, the public tends to back them in the following round. It's just they tend to bet what they saw last. And so the Giants, not only are they getting majority of the spread action with 70% of the tickets and 77% of the handle, they're getting majority of the tickets and handle for money line too. And a big reason why Caesars Sportsbook operates in New York and New Jersey, and all those Giants fans are rallying around their team. And so I get that. But it's everywhere. The Giants are a lovable underdog, and the Eagles, they had a lot of injuries down the stretch, most notably Jalen Hurts. That they definitely needed that bye, and we'll see if this is the Eagles team that was shredding teams earlier in the season, or if this was the Eagles team later in the season that was kind of dealing with all the injuries and falling a bit flat.
Max, it makes me nervous to be with the public because I rarely ever bet with the public. But I know I'm on the side of the public. Is this a case where it seems like the public is on the Giants, but the sharps are more going with the season numbers and backing the Eagles because of what they saw over the course of 17 games?
I wouldn't say that this is one of the sharpest sides of the week, that being the Eagles. I think the two clear ones are Bills and Cowboys. But yeah, the overwhelming public support on the Giants. I mean, they have the most spread bets and the most money line bets. So it just seems that's the obvious play, especially when they're getting the hook. And we did go down to 7 after opening at 7.5, but it got bet back up to 7.5. So I would expect that to be the number that it closes at, despite all the public action on the underdog.
Is it the most bet game so far of the week?
In terms of adding all of spread, money line, and total?
Yeah.
I would have to check.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Okay.
I know handle. It's Bengals Bills. Ticket wise, I don't know it off the top.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, let's move on to Sunday and talk Bengals Bills. And I know Uncle Big Nick has a Niners question there in the comments we'll get to as well. You mentioned the Bills being the sharp side. That makes sense with the way this line has moved. I think it opened 3.5 all the way up to 5.5. Another one where, I think, and I'll be honest, my reaction the same way that most of the public is how are the Bengals getting this many points? And yet we're still seeing sharp money on Buffalo.
Yeah, so when these two teams were scheduled to play before the DeMar Hamlin injury, this line closed as Bills as a 2.5-point road favorite. Considering that was only a couple of weeks ago, people hang on to their power ratings. They're not going to drastically alter them, for a couple weeks gap or so. And so if you're looking at Bills 2.5-point road favorites in Cincy, it makes sense that the markets responded, going from Bills 3.5-point home favorite, which we opened, and that's a pretty big adjustment from just a couple weeks ago, to now at 5.5, which is more where the market settled at with that Bills Bengals game a couple weeks ago. And this has been the biggest divide of any game. About 71% of the tickets are on the Bengals to cover, but 76% of the handle is on the Bills. Granted, we've gotten 3 six-figure bets on this game, and none of them have come at 5.5. One came at 4, and 2 have come at 5. So at 5.5, it's been a lot of Bengals action so far. But just with those bigger bets coming in early, obviously a lot of Bills love, even though both teams really struggled in their opening round matchups wildcard weekend. Like I think there's a very strong argument to be made that the Bengals should have lost to the Ravens, and then the Bills, even though they statistically dominated the Dolphins, they never really put them away. And then money line, it's been a lot of Bengals action, 74% of the tickets, 80% of the money. Joe Burrow and company, like obviously they've treated the public nicely. They had one of the best against the spread records this season. Same with the Giants. So public is definitely going to back those teams that rewarded them in the regular season. And then the total has dropped a bit. We opened 50. Went down to as low as 48. Now it's come back a little bit up to 48.5. And even with 82% of the tickets, we did get early sharp action on that under. And so it's definitely interesting just because the total a few weeks ago closed at 51. And when the game was going on before the Hamlin injury, both teams seemed to be going down the field pretty quickly. So definitely interesting to see that movement toward the under there.
Hey, is that all? Do you think that's because of the injuries that the Bengals have on both the offensive line and the defensive backfield? And B, do you see this line coming down at all? I know, obviously, 5.5. I can't imagine it going to 6. Do you see it coming down at all, or staying where it is?
I don't see it coming down just because we took 330,000 on Bills -5 and 220,000 on Bills -5. So we're going to listen to our sharp action. And we're not going to go down when we got 2 big bets on that number, regardless where the rest of the market is. With the total question, I think Bengals offensive line injuries can definitely play a part in this. Bills pass rush, ever since they lost Von Miller, though, it kind of hasn't been the same. And then also just in a playoff game, it's buttoned down. The defenses and are going to, be sharp. Every play is going to matter. The teams might be a little tighter on this stage. And so with these higher totals, they're already tough to clear when trying to bet an over. You need a lot to go right, and especially in a playoff environment, people will tend to bet under. Sharp or more respected bettors will tend to bet under when it's a higher total in the 50s or so.
Yeah, I find it interesting. A couple of things from that last discussion, and one is the totals. I know everybody, and Spencer, who's not here, I'll pick on him. He thinks this game's going to be a classic shootout in the mold of that Bills Chiefs game from this weekend last year. People forget that game was about to go under until I think Gabe Davis caught a touchdown pass with a couple of minutes left, and that started this flurry of touchdowns back and forth. If the Bills get stopped on that drive, that game finishes a full touchdown under the spread. Because the Bills, they don't go on quick strike drives that often. They do take up quite a bit of time. So you have to think about those things. My other point was when Max gives these numbers about percentage of money and bets on one side or the other, that wasn't always on where the line was currently. So it's 5.5 now. The Bills have all this money on them, but that was at 4 and 4.5. And so we're talking about two different numbers here, and that makes a big difference to sharps. And so, I think this line is it's super interesting. And another one, Cowboys Niners, 49ers -4 here. This one's bounced around a little bit, Max. So curious to hear what's going on with this one.
We opened this 49ers 4.5, and immediately sharps were all over the Cowboys on that one. We got to as low as 3.5 actually, but we took a $220,000 bet from one bettor on 49ers -3.5. So even though there's been really sharp action on 4 and 4.5 for the Cowboys, just that big bet on 49ers 3.5. I know that, our odds makers are high on the 49ers. The market's pretty high on the 49ers. The Cowboys looked really impressive against the Buccaneers, but the 49ers, they're obviously a much different beast than Tampa Bay, even when it's a Brock Purdy instead of Tom Brady. So it's definitely interesting to see, sharp action on both sides. But Zach, as you said, it really just depends on the number with these trends. So with the spread action so far, 49ers about 65% of the tickets. Cowboys, even with the $220,000 bet on the 49ers, it's 56% of the handle. I mean, if you take that out, and it really just goes to show like all the sharp action on the Cowboys at 4 and 4.5. And then money line Cowboys have gotten majority of the action there too. I think it's like 63% ticket, 64% handle.
And Uncle Big Nick wanted to know where is the public on the over/under in this game?
Yeah, so it's been mostly over money, and just given that the overs went 5-1 wild card weekend, especially with the public, they're tending to back overs anyway, and especially if you just see that and all they're needed for a clean sweep was Brett Maher to make one extra point. They're definitely going to be on overs in full force. 3 of the 4 overs, at least earlier in the day, had a 70% of the tickets, and the only exception was Chiefs Jaguars, and even that one still had like 56% of the tickets. There's been a little bit more under action as we've gotten to the day, and that's why it's dropped from 46.5 to 46. Total for this one, about 68% of the tickets, 73% of the money. So still over leans. I actually personally like the over in this game. 49ers offense looks really good, and their secondary to me is just it's looked quite vulnerable. And Dak, with all the interceptions leading up to the Buccaneers game, has gotten a lot of flack, but I think he's the clear best quarterback in the NFC playoffs still left. And I think 45.5, 46, it's like I personally would have this closer to 47 for the total. So I actually see value on this over myself.
Another good question from Nick. Are these totals adjusted because of what happened last week, and that's so fresh in everyone's memory?
Not necessarily. Like we're not going to shift our ratings just based off of 1 week of games. Now, granted, if there is a lot of sharp action toward the overs, and like the common misconception is sharps are always going to bet under. That's not necessarily true. They'll bet overs as well. Then we'll move it accordingly. But 1 week isn't really going to drastically impact our spreads or totals or any of our odds, really. It's too small of a sample size.
All right. How about player props? I was a little disappointed to find out Brett Maher extra point prop is not up yet. Hopefully later in the week we'll get that. But where's the action coming in on player props this weekend?
Yeah, so the big one is the under on Eagles wideout Devonta Smith's receiving yards. We opened this 60.5, and it's gone up to 64.5, which is where it was when I last saw it. So take it with a grain of salt. But the under on that has gotten 2.5 times more bets than any other player prop bet. And all of those under bets have come at 64.5. So originally we were 60.5 and we saw over action that drove the number up to 64.5. And even though we've seen all this under action at 64.5, that hasn't really moved. I think the splits for that, it was like 95% of the tickets are on the over, 70% of the handles on the over. The most popular, the over bet that's drawn the most money is Josh Allen rushing yards. We opened that one 44.5. It originally went down to 42.5. Now it's back up to 44.5. Josh Allen and Daniel Jones, both of those rushing quarterbacks, their rushing yards overs, very lopsided bets as well. Jones actually hasn't taken a single under bet to his rushing yard prop, and Allen, I think it's like 97% tickets and 99% handle.
Oh, well, let me go change that when we're off the show, so you can't say that anymore.
No, and yes, Jones rushing under is actually, it's not even the most popular 100%, or Jones rushing yards over, not even the most popular 100% club. We had two running backs, their receiving yards over. It was Travis Etienne. That's gone from 17.5 to 18.5. That's the most popular over bet by tickets out of any prop. And there hasn't been a single under bet there. And then second was Saquon Barkley, his receiving yards prop, 24.5 to 25.5. Again, 100% over action on that prop too.
Sounds like I got some bets to make.
Hey, interesting.
You guys don't lose for on a normal basis. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and with these prop markets, a lot of it is either it can be a Discord or people listening to a podcast that gives out advice like this. These prop markets are much softer than spread, total, or money line. It takes a lot less for a prop to move than either the big straight markets. And and especially for straight bets for props, like it's definitely much smaller sample size, even though prop bets have definitely gained in popularity and they're still noteworthy. But all it takes is just one recommendation for just to see the bet ticker explode.
When you're talking number of bets, are you talking in the hundreds or are you talking in the low thousands?
No, hundreds early in the week for prop bets. When it's closer to game day, it'll go way up. But early in the week, it's really either sharper bettors or people, either getting, like I said, a Discord pick, listening to a podcast, reading something, etc. People will bet prop bets mostly closer to game day.
One more thing before we let Max Meyer from Caesars Sportsbook go. Super Bowl odds board, the futures market here, has shifted just ever so slightly. We showed these numbers on Tuesday. Chiefs from a flat 3-1, they go up a dime to plus 310, and the Eagles were the team that goes down a quarter from 550 to 525. Is there a specific bet that was the reason for that, or just following the market there?
For this, I would just assume with the Eagles, the fact that they're playing the Giants and getting 7.5 versus, like if the Giants would have lost and the Vikings would have played the 49ers and the Cowboys would have played the Eagles, obviously the Eagles Super Bowl odds would be a little higher just because the Cowboys are rated higher than the Giants. So it's just strictly based off of matchups.
All right. Well, Max, we appreciate the knowledge as always. Enjoy divisional round weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Max.
All right. That is Max Meyer of Caesars Sportsbook stopping by on a regular basis for us this weekend or this year, and we certainly appreciate that. Guys, we're going to get to our picks. I want to have a quick basketball sidebar. Pelicans are, well, they're not in as much of a world of hurt as LSU men's basketball is. It's lost 5 games in a row. But the Pelicans are hurting a little bit. They kind of survived without Zion and Brandon Ingram for a little while. And this is the type of game tomorrow night in Orlando where just win it, and then you can kind of tread water until you get those guys back. But the clock's ticking a little bit. They slipped a couple spots in the standings and really need to get healthy.
I'm not sure betting-wise you can bet on the Pelicans right now. We had them in best bets yesterday. I really thought they'd come home and have a strong game. I didn't necessarily know if they would win or not, but I thought they would have a strong game, and I was completely wrong. And like you said, Zach, I mean, I think it's starting to show now. Zion and Brandon Ingram not around in that toe injury. I mean, good Lord, who misses 2 months with a toe injury besides Michael Thomas and Brandon Ingram? I mean, who? Find me someone, anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, turf toe is a different one. That one can keep you out a while, but this one was just described as a bruised toe. So it's It is
like last
perplexing
year
for
when
sure.
Zion before they went to media day and they said, "Oh, he might miss 3-4 weeks," and then it turned out to be an entire season. I mean,
Jim said he was
goodness.
wrong. Can we save that? Yeah, Zoe saved that. Jim said he was wrong. Let's replay that a lot.
Oh goodness.
But by the way, the schedule doesn't get any easier. I mean, look at these games. Like Orlando, okay, but at Miami, who just thumped you at home, Denver, who's leading the Western Conference, Minnesota, who's playing better, and by the way, we know firsthand gave the Pelicans everything they could handle with Zion a few weeks ago. Washington, okay, that's a little bit easier. But then at Milwaukee, and the game after this to end January is at Denver to face the Nuggets again. So you don't get these guys back. I mean, what do you go 2-5 in that stretch or something like that? And all of a sudden, now you're fighting to stay out of the play-in tournament when they do come back. And that's not where we thought the Pelicans would be just a few weeks ago.
I will say, don't overlook the Magic. The Magic have been sneaky in some games this season. I know they went on a little 2-game winning streak against the Celtics a few weeks ago, and they've been cold recently. But like Jim said, I would stay away from this game and their next game against the Magic.
I haven't looked at the schedule, but the last couple of months have to be easy because they've just gone through an absolute gauntlet for like a month and a half now. And again, I haven't looked at the schedule, but good Lord, I hope that that March and the end of February, March, and the beginning in April as they close out the season, it's got to be easier than this.
I know
the
they're
Western
done.
Conference.
Well, still,
And they're done
not
with
enough
Boston.
games against the Rockets. Sorry, Gabe.
I'm not a Rockets fan.
I mean,
So that's
okay.
Actually, to be honest with you, the Eastern Conference probably a little bit better this year. But they're done with Boston. They're done with Philadelphia. I think they're done with Brooklyn. So they're done with sort of those Eastern heavyweights.
They'll be done with Milwaukee soon.
They'll be done with Milwaukee after this game. They still do have, I think, 3 games left with Memphis. Very, very good team. So there's still some tough games in there. But yeah, more San Antonio's, more Houston's, more Lakers. Maybe that helps down the stretch.
Well, this announcement coming up, I guess, to see. I think we're gonna know a lot more because what is it next week? We'll probably find out more about Zion, and so
Yeah.
if you get the sense that he's going to come back sooner rather than later, then okay. But if it's what we've been getting, and every time he gets a little boo boo, he's gone for 3 months or a season. I mean, would it shock anyone if Zion doesn't come back this season?
Yeah, I would be surprised if he didn't come back at all.
Why?
But look,
This
it's a
season.
long season. The NBA regular season is so long.
This training staff needs. I mean, I'm serious. You want to? Pete Carmichael looks like Bill Walsh compared to this medical staff. I mean, it's awful. I've never seen minor injuries turn into season-long things and things that just linger forever. I don't know where they got these guys, and I'm not sure where they graduated from. I mean, must have been Northwestern or something along those lines. I'm just kidding.
Zoe's coming on after that.
I'm just kidding.
That shot.
Had to get a shot. She's not even here. She's not even on the screen to defend herself.
She should come on and defend herself. So Zoe, feel free to respond to that. By the way, speaking of Zoe, this will be right up her alley. We got women's basketball. You want some good basketball? LSU women's basketball has just been thumping people. They haven't played anybody really good yet, but they've won every game by like 15, 20 points. They're tied for third with Ohio State for the lowest odds to win the national title. They play South Carolina, by the way, on Super Sunday at 2:00. So that'll be kind of a fun preamble to the Super Bowl if you're into that. All right, Zoe. First and foremost, go Cats.
Thank you. Go Cats, Jen. That's like a knife through my heart.
Oh, okay. Maybe they went to Mizzou. I'm sorry.
And it's fine. I wasn't going to say anything about the ugly sweater you were wearing today, but
Go Cubs.
So speaking of Chicago,
hey, baseball town. It's a baseball town. That's all. It's a eating town.
Yes, but not my baseball
drinking town.
Anyway, for women's college basketball, as Zach was saying, LSU women haven't played anybody this entire season. The only team that they're playing that's a somebody is South Carolina, who is and the only undefeated teams are LSU, Ohio State, and South Carolina. I wouldn't count out Stanford to still make a playoff push, even though they took an embarrassing loss to the University of Southern California. But as Carville said today, I wouldn't bet against Coach Kim Mulkey. And for crying out loud, if tonight against Arkansas, Angel Reese ties Sylvia Fowles' double-double record at 19 games, there's no stopping this Tigers team.
One thing you know about women's basketball, at least in the well, I wouldn't even say recent past, let's say extended past, is you can cut that list off under UConn. It's not like other sports where you can take a flyer on a team that's 2,800 or get somebody in golf that's plus 6,000 or something. It's not going to happen in women's basketball.
Yeah, long shots just have not historically won.
They don't win.
Yeah.
They don't win in women's basketball. So the fact that LSU's up there gives them a decent chance to win because, I mean, I'm usually the kind of guy, especially in women's college basketball, where, okay, you want to give me South Carolina at even money and you take the field? Okay. I'm not saying this is necessarily the year to do that because we've seen South Carolina, not this year, but be upset. But I don't know. I kind of like those odds with the Gamecocks at plus 120.
I did too.
I think I'm proud of us. We nailed down Ohio State preseason. They had some good odds if I remember correctly, and now they're in that field. So
I will say this. This is a strange year because SEC women's basketball is usually like the SEC, the college baseball preseason poll came out this week, and 7 of the top 10 teams are SEC teams. It's usually like that in women's basketball, maybe not quite that heavy, but there's only 2 ranked teams in the SEC. It's LSU and South Carolina. That's it. Now, Tennessee, I think, is 6-0 in the SEC. Will probably get into the rankings at some point, but they had a bad non-conference. They're like 14-6 overall. They're not in the top 25. LSU is 17-point favorite against Arkansas tonight at home. So that's the next. But again, what they're doing is super impressive. And Zoe, you mentioned Angel Reese and the double streak. I still don't know. I think the time to bet LSU was when they were 25-1, 35-1. They haven't played anybody, the type of team they'll be playing from the Sweet 16 on. And so I don't know that you can even at plus 650 say, yes, I like LSU because we just don't know. This is sort of a collection of players from all over the place, and it's only Kim Mulkey's second year. And, when they play those better teams, we don't know how they're going to react. So,
which is why the game against South Carolina is so important, because that could be a really nice preview into how they're going to play in the tournament. Because the only other ranked team that they played in the season was in November against Oregon State when they were ranked 23. Now the Beavers are unranked.
Yeah. Was Arkansas ranked when they played them?
I think Arkansas may have been like number 25 the first time they played.
Yeah, they were low. Saw that UConn reporter making a whole scene about it.
So look. Usually in women's basketball, if you're in the SEC, you say, well, we don't need to worry about our non-conference schedule because we're going to face Murderers Row in the SEC, and it's just not the case this year. It's a weird year. So we'll see. But that is Super Bowl Sunday. James Carville did mention that in Cashing In with Carville this morning. Check that out on the Bayou Bets YouTube channel, talking about how that 2:00. Don't watch Super Bowl pregame. Turn on LSU South Carolina, and then flip over to the Super Bowl. And you got the Waste Management Open, by the way, which is one of my favorites.
Oh, that's the. Oh no, I forgot. Oh man, I didn't make my Waste Management live bets.
It's going to be no. That's Super
Bowl
next
week. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say that's week. Not yet.
Yeah, we got the Amex this week. Okay, let's do big bucks and get out of here. Gabe and Zoe, since you guys aren't officially playing big bucks, I want your best bet for the divisional playoff weekend. Gabe Henderson, you go first.
I've already kind of teased one thing from earlier. I won't say this is my best bet. I do like the Giants to cover, but I'll go ahead and stick my nose out there. I'll say Bengals money line. I'm glad Jim said it earlier, so I'm not the LSU homer who always.
I didn't say money line.
I know you didn't, but
get a little 2-1 action on that. They're close to it.
I just don't count Joe Burrow out. He overcame all of the offensive line issues last year, and I think he can do it again. And I like Dak Prescott. I think Josh Allen has been a little too careless with the ball. The Bengals just need to figure out how to run the ball. They haven't done that over the last few weeks. They need to run the ball in order to win. So, but I'll take Joe Burrow in any game. So I'll go with Bengals. Bengals money line. Little homerism this week.
Zoe Collins Rath, you're going to take all the Northwestern players on an NFL team, right? As your best bet.
Only if I'm going to play Jeopardy.
That's great.
Oh boy.
But because there are none left in the NFL, I don't know that for sure.
Is Trevor Siemian on a team? Is he?
I'm just.
Oh
piling
God,
on.
I hope not.
He's on the Bears, isn't he? Isn't he the Bears back?
He is.
No, that
He
was
on the Bears.
Yeah.
I think no, that's Peterman.
He should go play for the Falcons or the Panthers or something.
Somebody.
Maybe he'll be the Bucs starter next year. Who knows?
Oh,
Trevor Siemian is on the Bears. I think he's their third
He is
string
on the
guy.
Bears. Yeah.
How did they get Trevor Siemian and Nathan Peterman on the
Peterman.
same? They really were tanking. Okay, Zoe, your best bet this week.
Impressive.
I think the Niners will win, but I do think Dallas is going to cover in a probably sad, disappointing loss in Santa Clara. Something about the Cowboys and them just being the saddest choke artists in the NFL is quite amusing to me. It's going to be a great run, but I think they'll just lose by 3.
Wow. So we could
I
get.
love watching them lose.
If your best bet is that specific, let's go get an alternate spread on Cowboys or 49ers, by between 1 and 3 points. Let's do that. All right, big bucks. Spencer's on vacation, but he left us his big bucks. He likes a teaser with the Chiefs and the Bengals.
Copycat.
Yeah, it looks familiar, doesn't it? Well, he sent his in first now, but you posted him, so I don't know.
Yeah.
He also goes 49ers. This is an alternate spread. He's buying a point here. 49ers -3 against the Cowboys. Mentioned this earlier. He likes that Bengals-Bills game. Mabel to go over, and an alternate spread at the bottom, -10, which I don't hate for the Eagles, but you're only getting +110 there for giving up 2.5 points. I'm not sure I love that.
I don't like that at all. I mean, if you're going to bet the Eagles, then just buy the hook.
If you're going to get an alternate spread,
extra.
if you're going to get an alternate spread, I feel like you ought to get better odds than +110. But that's
for sure.
That's just me.
That's a lot of vig there.
We can't talk too much because the Guru is in the lead. He's at $1,040.
Barely.
You're a close second. And the interesting thing here is if that teaser hits Jim, you're going to go ahead of him because you bet a lot more on.
Yeah. Look, I've said it already. The Chiefs are the teaser leg of the year. So I'm not – look, if you don't like the Bengals, if you think the Bills have a chance to get blown out, then pick someone else. But make sure you're getting the right number. If you think the Eagles are an
Eagles -1.5.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
If you like the Eagles and you think the Eagles are almost the sure thing, obviously I don't like that, but then pair the Chiefs with the Eagles. But I honestly think Chiefs at -2.5, teaser leg of the year. I don't think the Bengals are going to get blown out. I don't think they're going to win. I do think the Bills at home and the possibility of snow weather is going to affect them. The offensive line.
Damar Hamlin could be there. I mean, it could be a scene. Yeah,
it could be interesting, but I just think, and even more so, the fact that the Bengals are having defensive back problems, and Eli Apple he's injured and he sucks. So that's a double whammy. Eli
Apple,
Apple
to him on the sideline.
How the hell is that guy still in the National Football League?
He's still starting for a playoff team too.
Awful.
It's amazing.
He has got, and I'm not just saying that because of Saints bias. He is awful. He was awful here. He's been awful everywhere he's ever been, and it boggles the mind that guy's still in the league. Tweet at me, Eli. Go ahead. We don't care.
Eli's mom might tweet at you. She's very active on Twitter.
She can tweet at me too. I really don't care. Mrs. Apple, your son sucks. How about that? Okay. I've got that out of the way. The Giants +7.5. Like I said, this is my upset alert. I think it's going to be a tight game throughout. We'll see what happens in the end, but I do think that one's going to the end of the fourth quarter. And then lastly, 49ers -4 the Cowboys. I mean, how many ways can you – I wish I would have put more on it, actually. I don't know how many ways to say this, but the Cowboys don't take – and I know they played great last week. Good for them. But they have not played well down the stretch in the final 6-7 weeks of the season. And Dak Prescott he's going to make friends with Mr. Bosa for quite a while on Sunday evening, I think. It's not going to be a friendly thing either.
We'll see Mike McCarthy's true colors.
Yeah, no doubt.
He's going to lose.
You know what's funny is Duncan, and I'm sure you'll talk on Data too. Duncan loves Mike McCarthy. He's like the biggest Mike McCarthy defender I've ever heard.
He really is.
It'll be interesting to see.
I'm going to press his buttons tomorrow morning.
All right, my big bucks. As I try to pull myself up or at least stay above water here, I'm going Chiefs -8.5 over the Jaguars. I agree with you, Jim. It's a great teaser. Like I think they cover outright, and so I'm going elsewhere for my teaser. Eagles -1.5, Bengals +11.5. And then I mentioned this earlier. This is an odds boost at Caesars. Zay Jones over 69.5 receiving yards and a touchdown. If the Jaguars are chasing, and it's also a little bit of a hedge for my, Jaguars get a late touchdown or something, and they're chasing the game to cover that spread. Maybe Zay Jones hits the prop for me. So $8 to win 34 there.
I will say this, that one of the sharp that I respect the most and listen to every week, I don't always agree with him, and here I'm butting heads with him, but he says the Eagles at -1.5 is the teaser leg of the year. I don't agree with him, but to go with your pick there, he probably likes your teaser, although he's all over the Bills, so I don't know if he'd like that side of it.
Yeah, I mean, Eagles and Chiefs, I thought about doing that, but I just like the Chiefs so much straight up. But I do think that's a way to play that. Probably pay a little bit better than a money line parlay because you're giving up some points, but like that a lot. So, all right, we got to get out of here. We got divisional weekend coming up. Enjoy it, everybody. We'll be back with you Monday, 4 p.m., and we'll have our Final Four in the NFL, and maybe we'll have some Saints news to bellyache about. That'll be a tradition unlike any other. So we'll see you Monday at 4. Jim has Datitude tomorrow morning live, 9:15?
9:15 a.m.
9:15 a.m.
And Uncle Big Nick afterwards on the regular podcast. After we do the live show, we put it up with our podcast. You can catch Datitude wherever you get your podcasts, and Uncle Big Nick and I will put our picks up as well.
All right. We will be back for Gabe Henderson and our producer, Zoe Collins-Rath and Jim Derry. I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching Bayou Bets.